And if, no matter what I saw with you as far as potential, if I'm navigating with you and we can't get through a day without you snapping at me or being cruel or being dismissive of me and my needs, well, I need to digest and be with the impact of that rather than being with how you didn't mean to hurt me. Hello and welcome to The Things That Come Between Us. I am your host, Charu Morgan, and I have been working with couples and individuals for almost 20 years, supporting them in feeling more connected to their body, their sexuality, their partners. On this podcast, we're talking about the things that come between us and our desire to really deeply connect with other people. Thank you so much for joining me. If anything that I'm saying really lands for you in a way that you want more support with, I offer private one-on-one sessions where you can get really customized support for what's going on in your relationship, your sex life, your personal relationship to your sexuality. In the podcast, I'm speaking really generally about things, and the great thing about working one-on-one is that I can help you with your specific needs and help you navigate the nuance of your personal experience. I can give you the hand-holding that you need in order to get to your personal next level. Sessions are offered virtually or in person in Northern California and can be done weekly, or I do immersions for those people wanting to do a little bit more of a deep dive, like a weekend away. For more information, you can find out more at charumorgan.com/sessions, and we will always put a link to that in the show notes. So in this episode, we're talking about the biggest mistake that I've made in my relationships, and plot twist, it happens when you think that you are doing the right thing for your partner, for yourself, for your relationship. So I hope that this will be a really interesting and empowering episode for those of you who may be making this same mistake. So I want to orient us initially, if you feel like you're usually the one in your relationships where you're feeling like your partner is responding very reactively. And of course, this can go both ways. You know, this is the thing, right? With a podcast, I always have to simplify because I'm highlighting one thing that may be happening when in reality, in relationships, multiple things are happening for multiple people at the same time. And the risk of sounding like a broken record, but that's where one-on-one support can really help, because you can't just glean from me taking like one tiny topic out of a larger context. But my hope, because that's all we can do in a podcast, is take like one tiny topic and isolate it and have a look at it, is that if there are these deep resonances, then it might allow you to become curious, to become interested, to investigate more, to become empowered in maybe making different choices. And that's, different choices that may foster more intimacy, more care, more connection. That's always my intention here. So let's just say that often you feel like your partner is in a reactive space when you're trying to navigate anything with them, whether you're navigating a challenge, or you're talking about desires, or you're just trying to deal with day-to-day life and conversation, and you feel like there's often a high level of reactivity. And I think it's important to note that reactivity can show up in many ways. When I say the word reactivity, maybe the first thing you're picturing is like they're snapping at you. There's agitation, there's edge. But it can also come in the form of tuning out, not being able to listen, walking away in the middle of a conversation, right? There's lots of different ways, because when I say reactivity, I mean their body is reacting to something and they're responding to that, usually an emotion, and they're responding to that reaction without being able to hold. They don't have a big enough space in their body. I'm sure this, I'm saying as they, but this happens to all of us. Sometimes, we hit a point where we don't have enough space in our body to hold what the particular emotional movement does for us, to us, however we want to think about that. And so when the kind of container is too narrow, then it comes out of us in different ways. And that's really different. And that's what I'm going to call a reaction. And those reactions are really different for all of us. For some of us, it does come up as snapping at our partner. For some of us, it comes up, I know I'm repeating myself, but It's really important when we're dealing with these intricacies and we're looking at nuance. For some of us, when my container is too full and I can't handle this next little piece of emotion, maybe you're sharing something with me as your partner and it makes me feel like I'm not doing a good enough job. And immediately, maybe my system's already full from work, taking care of what I have to take care of for the family, from other things in my extended family that are happening. There's all kinds of things that affect our capacity, right? And maybe when my system is hit with the, oh my God, I'm doing something wrong, you think I'm doing a bad job, whatever it is, even if that's not the intention of the conversation, now I'm maybe in a reactive space. My body goes into however it discharges. So sometimes I might go blank and just not be able to take in what you're saying. I might be externally reactive with that snapping. So I think I've shared enough that you understand now what I mean by if you're feeling like every time you're trying to connect with, talk to your partner about anything, all the way from simple to complicated, deep relational stuff, you're hitting some of these pieces. What we're looking at is when they're in their reaction, however that is, however it comes out for them, it doesn't feel good to be on the other end of it. And maybe, and here's where we go into, some part of you knows that the impact on your body is not good. You don't feel good when this happens, and it's perhaps like starting to happen a lot, or it's been happening a lot, and the impact on you is getting harder and harder. And here's where we get to the thing where we think that we often think that we're doing the right thing, a mature partner thing, the best thing for our partnership. And of course this is not true across the board, but where we may be actually doing something that's coming in the way of intimacy. And what this is that we know the impact of the reactivity hasn't felt good, and that it's hurting our system, and it's affecting our quality of life. And what we will do sometimes is we may, what I'm going to call big picture it. Well, I know that they're like this because they're stressed right now. I know they're like this because they just took on this new job. Well, I know they're like this because this is what their father/mother was like, and it's just what they learned from. And, I know they're like this because they're feeling scared. I know they're like this because they have X, Y, or Z trauma that led them to feel unsafe in certain kinds of intimate situations. And I know when I bring this to them, they can't help but shut down. And this kind of thing, if you find yourself, you're seeing this bigger picture so that you can stay open to them. This is I do want to say that this is very beautiful. It's very beautiful to have the capacity to see the bigger picture. And it's really important for intimacy and care that we can do that sometimes. But the thing that I want to challenge is that we have to look at intention, they didn't mean to hurt me, versus impact. The impact of their actions, the impact of their reactivity did hurt. The motivation may simply have been reactivity from old wounding, or defenses, or lack of capacity, or other many good reasons. But if the impact is that it didn't feel good on your system, it didn't feel kind, it didn't feel honoring of you, you felt in a state of shutdown or fear. And none of this is saying they are wrong, you are wrong. It's just really important because some of us, instead of registering the impact, we go into big picture, more understanding that they didn't mean to, holding the a view of, again, such a beautiful quality, holding the view of, who they really, them to really be. Not just their potential, but like maybe you've even touched and felt and seen and experienced these other sides of them that have more capacity, that aren't going from that reaction. And sometimes we lean into those spaces so hard, that bigger picture so hard, that we in some ways are trying to erase the fact, we're in some ways dishonoring that our body knows that we felt an impact. So for me, I'm a big picture person. I'm an intention person. I'm a take in the whole person. And I would say that this has been, I'm taking in the whole person, and I give so much leeway. I always lead with understanding and care, and really a very high level of forgiveness and care when someone is acting from something that I know has come from their wounding. And pretty much we all are, a lot of the time, right? Like acting from things that have come from our wounds. So when we feel hurt by something that happens with something or someone or what someone has said, I tend to jump to the bigger picture right away, the bigger understanding, and have care and leeway. And it's one of my most beautiful qualities. And if that's you, it's a beautiful quality in you too. It's another thing that's hard about podcasting, right? Really holding that nuance. We are talking about when this can kind of be working against us, but we really want, hold with me here, that it's also an incredible gift. So while this is an incredible gift and something that I am so grateful that I have, this capacity to see the bigger picture, it's also one of the number one things that I've done to actually, it's really hard to find a word, I want to say sabotage. I don't think it's sabotage, but something that in the end has been an enemy of intimacy rather than in favor of intimacy in my life and in my relationships. And what I mean by that, this has happened for me in all kinds of relationships. That is not limited for me or for you in sexual relationships or partnering relationships. I have often felt an impact from different circumstances that has not felt good to me. And it has ranged, if we talk about a familial situation that I've been in, it's ranged from everything from feeling genuinely abusive to hurtful or being pushed away or seriously dysregulating my system. And what would happen is that in the largest scale, I would dishonor or make my feelings, my experience less important than the bigger picture that I would hold for that person that I'm navigating with. And in doing that, this goes back to the episode where I talked about when we've developed a lot of our self-worth based on needing to be needed, right? Because some of my early life experiences, I essentially, for lots of good reasons, and it's so complicated and nuanced, some part of me essentially that was unconscious decided I can manage that. I'm having uncomfortable feelings. My upset isn't that big a deal. I'm strong enough. I'm going to be okay. And I wasn't thinking these words, right? When this pattern developed, it was completely survival. This is just discomfort in my body. I can live with that. I can live with the person being uncomfortable in this situation. And so I developed so many things, but techniques and tools, again, totally unconsciously. So my safety brain was working where I developed these tools. What do I need to do to make it okay for them in order that they don't leave me, in order they don't abandon me? And so in the end, I also get to feel like I've been the bigger person. I get to feel like, maybe I was not feeling like this as a kid, but as an adult, maybe I'm a little bit further along in my healing because I can see the bigger picture and I can see they're coming from their wounding. And I'm not going to let that stop me from allowing myself to love them. And the thing is that when I'm doing this, I'm actually creating many barriers to true intimacy. And the true intimacy that I'm talking about here is warrior level. It's like warrior level true intimacy. And because there's also this element going in and trying to manage their system for them. This I also started to speak about in that other episode. Oh, they're dysregulated? My dysregulation isn't as big a deal. I'm gonna help them regulate, because ultimately it feels like I'm helping. I'm really helping. But what I'm actually doing, and I'm using myself as an example, and I can speak about it this way because in my personal journey, this isn't something that I've experienced recently. I have some like wisdom of hindsight in it. And it's also something that I've witnessed with many of my clients in their relational dynamics. It's not simply personal to me, but I'm choosing to share it in a personal way. And for now, I can look back and I can say, oh yeah, I've done that. And I can see some tendencies of wanting to do that. I can see like the ghost of the impulse is there. And I can see now it being able to be an active choice that I can actively choose not to. I can watch myself in this, but when I would leave myself in order to support someone else balancing their system, when I would leave myself in order to in order to be the bigger person or hold the bigger picture and give more easily, or even just sometimes it's just to keep the peace, make it a little bit easier to navigate because I have this very dysregulated person and that's really uncomfortable to be with. But the most important piece here, and this is really takes some thinking and some pulling apart here, is that I wasn't being totally honest. Because if I was totally honest first with myself, and there are many reasons why I wasn't totally honest. In my familial situation, there was no winning. This was not a possibility. I was a child. I didn't have the kind of personal power where I could walk away, where I could protect myself, where I could take a stand for myself. Where at the time, any choice I made, I was essentially being harmed. And I'm purposefully not sharing much detail because I don't think it's about the exact details. But when I was a child, I was kind of locked in. I didn't have that many different options of how to respond. And so it maybe seemed like my only option was holding my own pain, holding the impact on myself, and doing my best to regulate the grown-up who was creating this distress. It was a good strategy at the time. The thing that I want to come back to is, here's this thing that was developed as a survival mechanism as a child, and it has its gifts as well. And even, I would say, even when I was a child, again, completely unconscious of this, but it allowed me to feel some sense of autonomy, some sense of power in the situation. Well, I can hold what I'm going through, and then sometimes I can even make choices that will help regulate the other. And because in that dynamic, there wasn't a possibility for actual communication or true intimacy, and my body didn't know if I was truly safe, that was a really good strategy. But it was also a strategy where some part of me set myself apart, again, because it wasn't a possibility to have true communication. And here, when I'm speaking about as an adult, employing this kind of strategy in an adult relational dynamic, providing that you are physically safe, and we should say maybe even mentally, emotionally safe overall, that you know that your body is safe, then when I'm employing this thing of I need to just hold myself and my own experience of the impact, and maybe I even need to regulate this other person, the way that is getting in the way of intimacy is sometimes, I've totally seen this before, I've felt aspects of it in myself where I have removed myself. In some ways, I've maybe put myself a little bit above, I know more than them. They're having a really hard time. I can see the bigger picture. I'm the one here who knows and who gets it, and I can make this choice. And that is a protection. You know, again, when I was a child, it was part of what helped me to feel that I had any autonomy. You know, I have some sense of control here in this very mad situation. And as a grown-up who is in a actually safe environment, other than we're looking at the impact, but the impact does not mean that you're not physically safe, then by holding in that way and trying to manage my partner, by setting myself apart as potentially being the one who knows or who has a better handle on this, I'm actually putting myself in the way of potential true intimacy. Because while I'm managing my own experience and potentially managing my partner in order to keep the peace, in order to calm the situation, in order to not make more waves, whatever the piece is in the moment, I am keeping my partner from truly knowing me, knowing what I'm going through. I'm keeping them from ever being able to possibly meet me and go deeper in intimacy and connection with me and understand me. And I'm also keeping us from ever really seeing the whole truth of our dynamic. If my feelings of the impact of things are swallowed, then am I like an incredibly kind and generous person who sees and holds the bigger picture, or am I not really available for a real encounter? And for a real encounter, might I be avoiding a real encounter because I'm afraid that if I bring all of myself, I will have to face either real intimacy, because maybe my partner can actually hear me, see me, help repair, meet my needs. But also, I may be holding and working this hard because I am terrified of having to face the fact that my partner actually cannot see me, repair with me, meet me, acknowledge me. So just going back to the disservice that I've done in a lot of different relationships in different ways is that I created this barrier to intimacy where when I felt like it was my job to hold my discomfort, my pain, in the interest of not making more problems, then I big pictured so much that I often again was dismissive in some ways, like to one of the most important people that I needed to take care of, which is me. I was propelled by my fear that if I listened to myself, if I honored that something really hurt me, and if I stood in that, my fear was that I would face more reactivity, that I would be dismissed, that I would be bullied, or in a worst case, that I would be left or abandoned. I would have to admit to myself, I'd have to see the truth of what was really here between me and the other person I was navigating with. I would have to face a more true scenario of what was happening between us. And in this more true scenario, I might have to admit that either A, they would leave me because they felt like my assessment or my needs or challenges or the fact that I was hurt by them was just too much to handle. B, that I would have to really face without me managing or over managing their system, being all up in their business. And see the first episode, Being in Your Partner's Business, for more information on that. They were not able to. I'd have to see that they couldn't regulate themselves and be a present partner who knows how to repair. So either they'd let me go because I'd make such a fuss every so often when my feelings were hurt, or I would have to realize that I needed to leave them because the vision and the potential that I wanted to be relating to, the person that they could be, the person they were maybe when I fell in love with them, the person that they could be when I was constantly managing their system for them, I would have to instead meet the real intimacy of who they really were and what they were really capable of without me carrying them emotionally in that way. And that was really scary to me because it meant that I may need to let go and realize it wasn't healthy for me. Really, this is something that I see all the time, and there isn't an easy answer. Many people in partnership were holding what's really there for us in order to avoid reactivity, in order to avoid being dismissed, in order to avoid the pain of not feeling seen and heard and not having true repair. And then we're managing our partner and thinking that this is intimacy because probably things are smoother when we do that. And that's not to say that there's no intimacy in a partnership where we're doing that. Relationships are complicated. It's not just one thing. But if one person is always getting catered to and the other person is constantly holding their truest thoughts and feelings, in some ways, the person constantly doing the catering isn't being fair to the other person because they're not allowing them to show them who they really are, even if who they really are isn't who we know they possibly could be. We are not our partners, our friends, our coworkers' therapist. It doesn't mean that we don't sometimes see things and help them see situations different or hold that for them. That requires a relationship where there's reciprocity, where there's balance. And if, no matter what I saw with you as far as potential, if I'm navigating with you and we can't get through a day without you snapping at me or being cruel or being dismissive of me and my needs, well, I need to digest and be with the impact of that rather than being with how you didn't mean to hurt me. And I always, when possible, I always like to offer some kind of tool that might support this inquiry in your life. Untangling these things is a lot more than just a tool from a podcast, but I like to, if I can, give you something to get started with. And when we're in situations like this, it can be really hard to have an accurate view of what's happening, especially if the person that we're navigating with has a dominating presence, is incredibly firm about their perspective, or even if they're internally isolating and kind of creating an impenetrable bubble where it's difficult for true communication. It can be easy to question our own perspective. And am I the one seeing things wrong? Did I do something wrong here? Am I, again, let me see the bigger picture. So a super simple tool that I use is I often will think, if someone said to me what I just said to my partner, where they were reactive, how would I react? Or you could use a friend. If you have a friend who you always feel like, yeah, they have feelings. They're a three-dimensional human being. But even if they have hard feelings, they communicate them in a way that's easy for me to understand, to find rapport, to find repair. So I think about a different person responding. For example, if it was like, I want to keep it so simple. So maybe it's like, hey, I was thinking of going to this place for dinner. And the response was, oh my God, we always go to that place. Again, just like some level of reactivity. I'm using a very simple example. I would think, well, what if I had said to this very understanding friend, or if someone had said to me, I'm thinking of going to that we should go to this place for dinner. And let's imagine even that my friend didn't even really want to go to that place. How might they have responded? And then I get to have a internal feeling of, oh, well, I think my friend probably would have said, I know you love that place so much, but can I be honest and just let you know that I'm not really in the mood? Would you be open to going somewhere else? And sometimes just feeling that contrast where maybe with the person who I'm navigating with, who's often reactive, I'm getting this, are you kidding me? We always go to that place. It's and there's just this edge or this aggression. Or it could even be a shrugging, oh, whatever, we're just going to do what you want anyway. Or there's an aggression there too, right? And I may need that litmus test of, wait, how would someone who wasn't in reaction respond? Well, hey, I don't really feel like going to that place. Would you mind working together to find a different place that works for both of us? And that little tool helps me so much to gain perspective of where I may have questioned myself of a dynamic. Because I may have just gotten so used to dismissiveness or unkindness. I may have been big picturing it so often, so much, that it's just programmed into my system to kind of soothe myself and say, oh, they didn't really mean that. And, we'll just find another restaurant. It's not really a big deal. That may be so internally programmed into myself that I am not even able to see anymore that behavior is having an impact on me. And so I use that little tool. And if I notice within that tool, someone who wasn't in an upset or in a reaction might have responded more in a different way, and I can feel that contrast, then that allows me to really notice, what was the impact of that on me? And then I have an option, then I have a choice to communicate the impact. And this is how I work toward intimacy. I let my partner know, or it could be a family member, friend. It's not limited to partner, right? But I let this person know who's so we always go to that place, fine, whatever. You're going to win this anyway, so let's just go. I get to notice, I have feelings about that. That doesn't feel good. That feels antagonizing. It hurts my feelings a little bit. And it doesn't feel like partnering. And then I get to choose to say, hey, I love you. I really want to be close to you. And even though it's been a busy and full day and we're both really tired, I'm excited to go to dinner with you. I did want to go to that place, and it didn't feel good to have you react the way you did. But if what you need to express to me is that place didn't work for you, I'm open to that conversation and finding something that works for both of us. But I don't want to be spoken to like that. And then you get to see. Now your partner knows how many little mini thousands of times have you made it okay when maybe it's not really okay. Then that kind of dynamic continues on for months or years. It's something little, sure, if it's 1 in a million, no problem. Little communication, sort it right out. But there is an impact. And by saying to my partner, I'm open to having this as a discussion, then I get to know them better too. If they come back at me oh my God, what the heck are you talking about? This is ridiculous. I can't believe you're making a whole issue out of this. Or again, because reactions come in different forms. I'm just giving a few examples. Or it's just we're going to go where you want to go anyway. Really just pick. It's fine. If that's the response I get, even when I come with, it didn't feel good to be spoken to like that. Or this is a good one. Maybe you'll even get a response. Wow, I have to walk on eggshells around you. I can't even just say what I'm thinking. Wow, okay, fine. I just won't talk the rest of the night. So now I get to know, okay, so even when I share from my feelings that didn't feel good to be spoken to like that it had an impact on me, even if they didn't mean for it to, now I get to see that even when I share from a tender, vulnerable place, this is the kind of reaction that I'm navigating with. Okay, that's great information. That information, now I'm really being intimate with who they are instead of just my habitual pattern of internally dismissing. It's not that big a deal. We'll just change the restaurant. It's fine. And then quietly holding how uncomfortable that made me feel through the whole dinner. But you see, hopefully that example gives a little bit where you can see where it may seem that me not making a big deal out of it, quote unquote, and just holding it in and changing the restaurant might be the path of least resistance, might be the thing that allows us to maybe have an okay time because I don't want to lead to more conflict. But if I'm sharing from my heart and I'm still concerned that I'm going to lead to more reactivity coming from a more childlike place in whatever form it comes from, just by saying how I feel, that's indicative of a deeper piece that needs care. And by not saying anything and just quietly making the shift, I essentially allow the person with the reactivity to kind of strong arm the direction of the relationship. And I'm not even fully there. So Again, of course, there's nuance here. And I hope that this example has helped to put some of the concepts into perspective. I'm not talking about once every few months you have some kind of stickiness that you're then able to talk through. I'm talking about this is a regular dynamic within your partnership. There are many more things that play into it than just what I've been able to speak about in this episode, and this is a good place to start. This is a good place to start. What would this conversation go like if somebody who was feeling relaxed in their body was answering me? And it may take some time for you to even get to know yourself and how some of these things are feeling, because it may be deeply, deeply ingrained to respond by just letting it go, making the shift. It may be deeply habitual to be holding that bigger picture or being that kind of peacemaker. Likely because some part of you knows there may be more reactivity if you do say what's true for you. And if we're in service of true intimacy, the opportunity is to begin to look at what would it look like for me to fully honor the impact of my experience and to feel safe to share it with my partner openly and let them see me and know who I am and what I'm going through. And if you do not feel safe to even just share the impact and your experience, please, please reach out for some help from a therapist, from a community member. Absolutely, this is something that I could support with. That's a really good indicator that you're feeling very disempowered in your relationship. And it could also, if you're not feeling safety, it could be indicative of much larger issues where you would need support. I'm here rooting for you to be all of yourself in your partnerships, to feel safe, to share your experiences, to be able to move in the wobbly ground of true intimacy, where there's often a lot of vulnerability, a lot of tenderness, a lot of not feeling in control or knowing exactly what to do. And I know that that can be really scary. And that's why we're so lucky in this world to have incredible people who have devoted their lives to being able to support you in going through these kinds of moments of like really learning to honor ourselves in a new way, learning that it's okay to bring all of ourselves or more of ourselves to our relationships. So thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed this, please follow or subscribe. And while you're there, please give us 5 stars, write us a review, share an episode that you enjoyed with a friend. This really, really helps. I love to get the word out about this work and helping more people become aware of it. And you sharing it with your friends is a huge way that happens. If you are interested in booking sessions with me or joining a retreat, you can go to charumorgan.com. And again, we'll put a link in the show notes. And as I said before, if anything that I'm saying really lands for you in a way that you are wanting more support with, you can do private one-on-one support with me that would be customized to specifically what's going on in your relationship. What are the dynamics and themes that you or you and your partner could really use help with in order to get to what the next level of intimacy is for you? And if you're wanting to know more about that, you can go to embodiedtantra.com/sessions. And again, we'll link to that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you next week.